It's Wednesday evening once again, and here at the Tribune, this is John McAteer, Eamon McFadden and Declan Kerr with our weekly look back at what's been happening. And it's the 17th of November. Just looking out there, we see the Christmas lights have just been put up over our heads, and they'll be switched on sometime within the next week or whatever it's going to be. Lots of switch-ons will be going on. The public switch-on at Letterkenny, unfortunately, has, because of the COVID problems, has been cancelled. They'll be switched on, probably as on schedule, but not in a public way. I suppose that's one of the themes that we have this week is the increases on COVID.
Huge
numbers. The numbers increasing dramatically, but particularly in hospital. What's it going to do for Christmas, do you think?
Well, the projections are not. The projections are not good in relation to that. So, listen, let's hope. But I suppose we can't rule out that there are going to be more restrictions, John.
Given that, like, we were in the same position this time last year, it's remarkable that so many of the population is vaccinated. Yet this is the situation that we're in again. Once again, back to the same number. So it really just shows you like what was the.
Have we erred on the side of caution and not rolling out the booster doses earlier?
It looks a bit like that now.
Yeah,
you think that
does, you know, that there was,
especially if they were there, you know, to be.
You know, it looked like a little bit of dragging on that, and we're now faced with a situation not dissimilar to last going into Christmas of last year.
Unfortunately, the pandemic is as virulent and as rife. And when you hear Tony Holohan talking about potentially 200,000 across December, 4,000 people in hospital at Christmas time, those are frightening figures. But I mean, the figures, the outer figure in the modelling is 400,000. It would bring the country totally to a standstill. So where does that leave us? Why has the vaccination programme not worked as we anticipated earlier on?
Yeah, there was somebody I was chatting to today actually who effectively says that they feel like they're walking around with no immunity now because they had the Johnson vaccine very early on. They had one single shot, and he says if it proves to be less efficient as time goes on, and he was an early adapter to get it, that one boost, where does that leave the like of him? So people have these questions about it.
At least he has antibodies. Should he get the get the COVID? It will be less severe. I mean,
should be.
I feel much happier than I did say 2 weeks ago because I got the booster dose last week. Whether it's a psychological thing or what, but the general belief is that had it not been for the huge rollout of the vaccine, there would be thousands of people would have died, thousands more.
Yeah,
in
you
hospital.
have to say.
We have to look at
science
that.
would tell you that.
You know, the hospitality sector and those now are subject to curfew from midnight tomorrow night, midnight closure of. But I mean,
is that the issue though?
I just listened to Brian Dobson on the News at One talking to Tony Holohan. He asked him very directly, should Christmas parties be cancelled? He just simply said, we're advising people to stay at home as much as possible and to work from home. He wasn't asked the question about working from home. He was just asked about the specific question was Christmas parties. So you're not getting direct answers. Like that is still further down the road. NIAC's not meeting again until next Wednesday. There'll be a lot of monitoring and modelling going on in the meantime, and all of a sudden the interest in figures coming out each evening, you know, you're way up over 4,000.
You're back in that zone
again. You're back in that, you're in a trajectory where you're up around that 4,500. What if it goes over 5 and heads for 6? Do we hope or can we expect that it might?
What do you do if we go back into lockdown and people are back out of work again in that hospitality sector and all of that? Like, there's a whole raft of questions will follow suit.
Yeah, yes, and there's the whole general winter flu thing beside it, and then obviously the knock-on consequences for people that are waiting for surgery and for that's all. You mean anything that's not an emergency will be on the long finger.
Well, about 20% of the population is waiting for an appointment of one kind or another. Elective surgery is going to be cancelled all over again. We don't want to get into a wild negative frame because Christmas is only 5 weeks away. Christmas is a very important time of the year. Apart from religion, which I suppose it still is about that legend of Christmas and the birth of Christ. But commercially, generally, people in commerce will tell you that in that 6 week leading up to Christmas, the need to make as much money as will carry them through until the end of next summer. That's not really happening.
Cash flow, no.
People are not spending money either.
Yeah.
I was just listening to BBC Northern Ireland's news today. They have 145 million handed out, €250 to spend.
Their voucher scheme.
The voucher scheme. Less than 50 million what has been spent. Less than 50 million.
That's
So
amazing.
they don't know where it's gone.
Yeah.
We never had more savings in this country.
Yeah.
So there's an insecurity there where people are not spending money anymore.
I would say if you look at, say, the likes of online retail, it will be spiking even bigger again this year. So it is the local retail outlets that will suffer from that. So yeah,
I don't know what impact the shortage of materials and goods are having on online. I just noticed this week that the online vans are busier on the roads again. There was a lull there for a number of weeks, probably going back since the end of the summer, and the supply line has simply had dried up. From talking to staff in some of the big retail outlets across Donegal, particularly in Tirconaill, so far so good. They don't seem to have any problems. So we'll just keep that in mind. But we have cancellations all over the place, and unfortunately the whole spirit of Christmas is going to be somewhat dimmed. But people have, it's still the same message as it was on the 12th of March last year. To stay safe, wear a mask, keep your distance, and stop socialising. That is basically the same message. It's the message that's very hard to sell at this point.
Yeah.
But NEFIT and the government, indeed, they're caught in a very difficult position, because I can read into that closure at midnight, because effectively they're not closing the nightclubs. So that will affect the implications of the government having to pay up if they're closed.
Yeah.
That's been costing up. I mean, the support mechanism for loss of business has cost the country hugely. But will the fact that we're leaving the nightclubs open until midnight, will people go out earlier?
So you go into a nightclub now about 8 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
It's just, you wouldn't even have gone to the pub at that stage
Yeah.
before, when you were
We need to leave
had
shortly.
the dancing shoes on.
We need to get this show over shortly if we're going.
Anyway, we're going to move on a little bit. We have going to start, Declan, with you with Harps and Geraldine McLaughlin's All-Star.
Yeah. Geraldine McLaughlin got her long-awaited and overdue All-Star award on Saturday night. I suppose Geraldine was one of the top players in the country for the last decade. She was nominated 5 times previously, and finally on Saturday night she's got a Just Award for. She was a top forward one of the top forwards in the country between playing for Tirconaill and for Donegal, and she becomes only the 5th Donegal player to receive that honour, and richly deserved. And there was a nice homecoming for her on Sunday back at the lagoon down in Tirconaill, where family and friends, and we must remember 2 other girls from the Tirconaill club were also nominated. 3 players from the one club from Tirconaill were nominated. Her sister Nicole and Evelyn McGinley didn't get awards, but it was nice to be honoured to be in the 45. For
Geraldine
Well overdue that.
Yeah.
She's had an amazing career. She's had a truly amazing career.
Yeah.
But it's time to go through a career like that and not get one.
The only other major award now that Geraldine hasn't won is a senior inter-county title with Donegal. She come relatively close. She captained Tirconaill to the All-Ireland club back in 2014. So she's been honoured in lots of forums, but to be in the top 15 in the country, it's something that we were, I suppose, the county and her own club were waiting on. It finally arrived on Saturday evening.
Listen, we'll move on because
and Finn Harps then.
we'll look at Finn Harps Friday night. Ollie Horgan. Do you see his dreams coming true?
I think that, based on the results last weekend, the draw against St Pat's looked like a point wasn't going to be enough. The expectation was that Waterford would beat Longford on Saturday night. That didn't happen, a draw there. So it turns out that the point on Friday night leaves Harps in quite a strong position going into Friday night's game. If they match the result of Waterford, who play Pats, then Harps will be in the Premier Division. That'll be the 6th or the 5th time in 6 years that Ollie Horgan has kept Harps in the Premier. They've only been out of the Premier Division once since 2016. I think they'll beat Longford on Friday night. I think there's an air of...
We hope.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have predicted that result with Waterford and Longford last week.
Definitely not. I mean, Waterford have been going very, very well over the last 2 months. Their results better than harps.
So
Yeah.
But so that draw.
there's
on
all to be
Saturday
played
night-
for there yet, but Harps is in pole
Well,
position, and that
that's
can
just-
just
They're just they
we
have
just
they,
wish them
they
well.
have a superior goal difference. They're both on the same points, but Harps have a superior goal difference. So let's hope that Ollie and
Right.
Paul Haggerty and the squad can keep them in the Premier for another season.
Now we're going to visit the Green and Theatre for our next story. Well, not really the Green and Theatre, but a story about the Green and Theatre next week for the staging. Brian Freel's The Enemy Within. A fine play.
Yeah.
So you're going to talk to us about the costumes.
As you say, John, that's I think it's a great production. It's in that part of that Column Kill 1500 events that are going on now.
Yeah.
So it's the biggest production I think that the Green and Theatre have ever done, which I suppose with celebrating what the subject matter is, it's a great all-star cast. Sean McGinley taking the lead role in it as well. But one of the story this focuses on is actually the costume design, which has largely all been done locally here, just out the road from us, between Milford and Ramelton. Deirdre Ramsey, she is a well-known costume designer, and in fact, all around quite a creative, talented person in many ways. She ended up working with a costume designer and creating all the series of these monk robes that are going to be on it. So I think it's going to be very, very heavily stylized and very accurate to the time and all of the era. So it's going to be a very atmospheric thing. And so she has there, you can see some of the great creations that are in there. She's pictured with Jack Quinn, who's one plays a role in the production. And that's the thing that is due to take place in the theatre now from next Sunday over.
See Sean McGinley starring in that, you know.
Yeah, like a
veteran actor now.
big name now. Sure, he's probably one of the biggest acting names in the country.
Oh,
really.
yeah.
And Deirdre comes from a very artistic family too.
Yeah.
Her father Charlie was a well-known artist.
Yeah. Her family goes back in her,
Yeah.
on her mother's side as well.
Ullerston School.
Yeah, Principal Del Spoon, still living in Letterkenny.
I can
Yeah.
still visualise him.
Yeah.
Her,
With the glasses, smoking the pipe.
there was and the same on the mother's side of the family from Downings, and that there were some of them worked as dressmakers in Austins and places like that as well. So so that'll be very interesting. That's actually going to be a live event, and I hope it does go ahead now with all the.
But talk to us a
preparation.
bit about making the costume. Did she make these costumes out of her own home?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
So what she ended up doing was she got fed the designs by a designer, and she ended up mocking up all the costumes, and she went to such an effort. She was saying that she mocked up each one of them 3 times, and then before she cut any of the nice expensive material that they got. So ultimately she's worked on these monks' robes that are very kind of in keeping with the historic times, but also with a bit of artistic license to make them very aesthetic pleasing for the production. She worked on them. She made about I think it was nine of those, and then there's a couple of variations as well. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think some of them have to be kind of aged looking, which is I think an art in itself. And there's that, and there's a few other robes in it as well. So she has done a phenomenal amount of work on that, and she did it actually in a relatively short period
Are
of time.
numbers been restricted? I suppose they are.
I'm not whatever.
I don't know what the story is.
guidelines are in.
Anyway.
The theatres were that if you had a COVID cert, they were back to 100% there.
Yeah.
But that's by the by. So it's going to be on for a week from Sunday to Sunday, effectively coming up this Sunday the 21st, and then thereafter they're going to have it shared to be able to share digitally online from the 2nd to the 5th of December. That's going to be available. So it's going to be kind of a dual performance, but it's directed
Anyway,
by Katrina McLaughlin there.
We're going to move on here. We're well into this programme at this point. Just 13, 14 minutes. 20 years ago, the Urban District Council, remember them? They were honouring a well-known journalist called Kevin Sharkey, and there was a big evening at the Urban Council, and the press was congratulated. Well, not the Tribune actually. And there was tea and buns and all that afterwards. Kevin was leaving after 20 years in Highland, and the Urban Council just were not his. He wouldn't have been a favourite with the Urban Council, but such was his stature in Donegal. And I remember doing stories with him the time that the Blinny Road was being built, and the carry-ons that was going on there at the Urban Council meetings was great altogether. But anyway, they had a lovely evening of tribute to pay Kevin as he departed to join BBC Northern Ireland, where he still is to this very day. Prominent figure and has done very well in life.
Features a lot there on BBC on the Newsline.
Done a lot of good
Yeah,
work over
like-
the years.
The amount of research that he done on stories and the kind of stories he did on Highland we haven't seen since. We've just not seen them since then, because he was one of Donegal's outstanding journalists, and perhaps the best journalist that local radio in Ireland has ever had. And I always thought that he probably might have gone beyond Belfast and moved on to BBC elsewhere. He's best remembered, I suppose, for being the first broadcaster in the 26 counties to air the views of Sinn Féin after Section 31 of the Broadcasting Act was lifted in 1993. And that was a major coup. He interviewed Martin McGuinness. A very, very big night. And we're just simply saying that Highland Radio would be much the poorer with his departure from the station, and perhaps it is an appropriate time to remind all our readers that without clearly designed policy and expression and news presentation, we would be much worse off. Anyway, that was then. We're back now to the here and now. Where's my script? George Bowl. Who's doing that story?
Yeah. Listen, a fitting recognition for George Bowl on Monday. The roundabout at the Mountaintop, formerly named in his honour. One of the Letterkenny's best known businessmen. Hard to believe, just somewhere close to 60 years ago, we bought a 10-acre site at the Mountaintop for £45.
Right.
Yeah.
Unreal.
And resided in a caravan for the first couple of years, and from there he now has over 50 units let out there on the Pine Hill Industrial Estate. Last year, Fianna Fáil councillor and a neighbour of his there, Councillor Kieran Brogan, proposed that the Mountaintop roundabout be renamed in his honour, and that came to pass on Monday, and it was a lovely occasion up at the Mountaintop there with family there, his two sons, Ricky and Gavin, who are continuing on the business, and his daughter Drew and wife Betty, and extended family.
I suppose it has been Letterkenny's most successful industrial estate. It has been really Letterkenny's first industrial estate.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And George just keenly spotted that there was a niche for that market when he was looking around Letterkenny, and it went from strength to strength, and it was nice to see that George being recognised in that way, and he was very proud of that on Monday.
Of course, when you think of the amount of successful businesses that have been launched off the back of that, you know what I mean? He's provided a lot of livelihoods and a lot of everything from his vision.
But there's a huge amount of activity in there. And
never cools in there.
Never ever cools. But anyway, we're going to now move to Canon George Irwin, who has recently retired in... probably in the Dunfanny area, really.
The parish is Clondaharky and Mevo is where he was in.
Yeah, and he was also in more recent times doing Fannet and Carrigart. Carrigart was part of his ministry, but Fannet was latterly added to that. Yeah,
in fact, all them places were kind of mentioned in there. That forms the basis of this article, because it's as he describes it, it's North Donegal in poetry and prose. And that's the reminiscence of him. We featured him last week actually as well, and we're chatting about him on the podcast here, because they had a farewell do for him really about his retirement. He was only supposed to spend a short time in there. I think it was only 6 months or so, or maybe even a year, but he ended up spending 3 years before he retired. But he talks about his affinity with Donegal. He's from Anaman originally, so he would have an affinity with that Ballyshannon, South Donegal area.
There's a connection with a caravan park, or a caravan in Port Salon, which he knew Fannet before he came to Donegal. Of course, he wouldn't be that far away across the border in the south of the county, really, would he?
That's it. But this is his kind of ode to up here, and the more recent times of his ministry. And he has a bunch of 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of good reading in this actually. Memories of Fannet is one of the poems. Remelton, where the Lennon meets the sea. Ards Forest, Rathmullen and the Lake of Shadows. A Journey Beyond the Mountaintop. These are all the titles of some of the poems. Carrigart, as you said. Downings by the Sea. I read all Duntally Woods over in our part of the world too.
He really has a very good poetic license. He has a great flow.
And a lovely tribute to all the places he enjoyed while he was here too. So that's a lot of reading in that.
There's a lot of reading in that, and it's one good reason if you're into poetry is to buy. Love to see him do a book of poetry.
That would be worthy of it.
Anyway, we're doing the front page right now. We already talked about COVID and the cancellations. COVID has forced the IFA to scale back on their national rally. Tim Cullinan, the president, came here to Donegal on yesterday morning to actually launch the National Day in Marion Square. Probably thousands of people would be assembling there. Now that's been severely curtailed and cut back. Probably 2 vehicles per county and smaller numbers of people going. They'll monitor it across the weekend to see can they leave it at that and still carry on with it as a public event.
Yeah.
So that is a big disappointment for the likes of Brendan McLaughlin, who's the chair here in Donegal. But he said that the worsening situation with the pandemic was their main priority at this point.
Yeah.
We're also reporting on a major honour for the Casey family from Rosapena. Golf Magazine's top 100 in the world rankings has recognised St Patrick's Links at Rosapena at number 52, and it is the highest new entry for 21-22. And this, we're saying, is a huge reward for the Casey family, who invested 40 years of their lives and times in developing golf and the tourism resort in Sheephaven Bay. Tom Doak, the lead associate, Eric Iverson and the team that designed St Patrick's have been the recipients of many congratulations this week on what's been described by legendary RTE broadcaster Sean O'Rourke as a monumental achievement. I'd like to see Sean back on the airwaves again soon. I just wonder what he's doing. Anyway, we'll do something different. Declan, the lead story you have written this about a dramatic delivery for a Mulford family. Just take that and tell us what it's about.
Yeah, this is Colin and Stephanie Lynch, a couple living in Fox's Glen in Mulford. They were looking forward to the birth of their third child. Now, they did expect it would be in Tirconaill University Hospital. The baby was due yesterday, actually, but it came early last Thursday morning. Colin, luckily enough, was at home. He's usually based in Dublin at that time of the week, so about 6 o'clock in the morning, or between 6:30, 6, Stephanie started to experience contractions, and it fast forwarded very quickly, and Colin had to assist in the delivery, and their little baby girl, Alice, was born at just before 7 o'clock.
And with best wishes to the family for the future, we'll leave it at that for this week. Thanks for listening. Join us again next week. And this week's edition of the Tribune is now on sale. Enjoy it.